What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Apocalypse Movies. Thank you so much for looking at the camera, Brian. Greatly appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
It is the Fandalorian Club.
We're
today.
live now. If you didn't know,
We are back here
live now
for the Fandalorian Club live on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, 6:00 Pacific.
Except for next week.
We have two more of these, this one and next week for the Mandalorian. We got the penultimate episode to discuss today, Chapter 23, Episode 7 of Season 3. The Spies. We're going to be diving into The Spies. What an incredible episode to talk about today. And we're also extremely excited to have our guest on today. PJ Campbell is in the back room waiting to be brought on, and we'll bring him on here in just a little bit to talk about Mando with us. Hope everyone is doing fantastic out there. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure you guys are chatting away here on this episode. A lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of theories. We want to hear it all. Brian, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Low-key threw my back out like Jill did at work. But other than that, getting old's fun.
Yeah, you're the oldest out of all of us, too.
No, Molly is. Nice try.
Well, you're not supposed to reveal a woman's age, but, nice job, Brian.
She has multiple times said it. But yeah, other than that, pretty good. One more day closer to Friday.
I think you said that
this series.
Oh, you're going down, bro. Kings. Light the beam.
I don't think I've ever been more torn.
Light the beam. It's happening, Brian. You're going down.
Like, part of me actually genuinely wants the Kings just because it just doesn't ever happen.
So. We're back and we're staying. The Kings have figured it out after what feels like 50 years of my 31 years of life. The Kings have finally figured it out.
Last time was what? 06?
Middle of the 2000s.
What
yeah.
96?
It was.
I forget which year it was.
No, it was the middle of 2000s. I wasn't that young. Yeah, it was, which is close to 20 years ago. But yeah, look, we're not here to talk about basketball. We'll definitely get into that over the course of the series because obviously Brian's a Bay Area Warrior fan. I'm a local Sacramento Kings fan. So that'll be a fun little rivalry. But we have some incredible Star Wars stuff to talk about today. Really excited. Bunch of content, stuff, things, just crazy things happened. And like I said, we have a special guest joining us today. He is the former head writer of the movie Trivia Schmodown, and he is also a co-host of a incredible podcast called Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film, and that is Mr. PJ Campbell.
Imagine being a Warriors fan when you live in Sacramento. Imagine the audacity.
My Bay Area living is tripled this one, so I don't even know what you're saying.
I loved the intro, by the way, but I was getting hot listening to that going as a former Sacramento liver and person who was born there. How dare you, Brian? Come on, man.
Right?
We finally found the key to we're playing well. This is 2004, 2005 Kings. We're looking good. And here you are.
Oh, no, you guys look great. I mean, you're the higher seed. So, yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, the Warriors are my team, but
it's okay. We all make bad decisions.
If they lose
sometimes.
to anyone, I'm pretty sure I've been making.
They had their time to shine. It's now purple.
It's
now black and purple's time to shine.
Light
Go
the
Kings.
Beam.
Light the beam. Light the beam. See.
Even Dipper says it. Yeah,
agrees. Perfect. That was perfect timing.
I love it. All right. Well, look, PJ, super excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us, my man.
Of course, man. I'm happy to be here.
We haven't been on a show together in a while. Obviously, POD Schmodown days. So it's been a little while. How are you doing?
I'm all right, man. Yeah, it was funny. You and I were texting back and forth earlier, and I was to be honest, outside of what I do with PLD, I've kind of walked back from the space, and I'm doing my own thing. I bartend now. I'm very happy, just doing my own thing, and I'm surviving and having a good time. But I was I can't pass up a chance to talk about Star Wars with two of my favorite people because I haven't been with you guys in so long. The last time we've really been together and hung out was
I was fat.
I think it was my wedding.
Yeah, it was your wedding. It's
Oh,
really been
yeah,
that
that's
long. I
right.
mean, we've talked and hung out a little bit
Yeah.
virtually since then, but like it's been a while.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was just like, of course I want to come on and talk Star Wars because you're like some of my favorite people in general, and we all love Star Wars. So let's gush about Star Wars because it's not like the internet has like really terrible toxic opinions about Star Wars. No, not at all.
Yeah.
I just
well,
love
luckily,
that they keep throwing sequel stuff into this and just being like, deal with it. Especially this episode today.
the hardcore fanboys are the not the fanboys, but the troll boys. I guess I'll call
The
them
sequel deniers.
Sure, they're pulling their hair out constantly over this stuff. So
Imagine thinking that they were going to unwrite the sequels when they basically announced episode 10 over the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, I just imagine the audacity.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. But no, look, we have some really cool things to talk about with this episode today. It has left us with so much Star Wars goodies to dive into. Before we get to that, we do have a couple comments here. One super chat from Mr. John Booze. Paleon, my boy. Also, congrats, Jake. Thank you, John Booze. Hello, Brian and PJ. Thank you, John. Much appreciated. I saw Sean commented it as well. Thank you guys, everyone who reached out today. Very much appreciated on my end and Gabby's end.
I would like a congratulations from everyone because I've known for like, what, a month?
You really want a congratulations for not saying
For not
anything.
spilling the beans.
Hey, I had to, you know what? I had
mean,
to find out on social media, like all the plebes and shit. So, you know.
It might have been top 5 hardest things I've ever done just because I'm constantly having to check myself and that doesn't happen. So...
And I should say, not everyone watching is a plebe. I realized, like, it's just how bad, like, our communication life is hard. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, you know, you guys, everyone knows me at this point.
Do we?
I have a big mouth.
Do we?
So-
No, that everyone knows that about you. They definitely know that
exactly.
about you. Yeah.
Jake had to like when he gave me this like dad talk of like, you can't say anything. Thanks, Gabs. I miss you. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Back to Star Wars. I'm sure that'll come up sparingly here and there. So thank you guys very much. But let's go ahead and dive into
having a baby.
Mandalorian.
Woohoo!
Before we talk about episode 7 and everything that it offered, PJ, I got to ask you. You know, we've got 6 episodes prior to this, 6 weeks worth of Mandalorian. Everyone seems to be extremely all over the place when it comes to season 3. How have you been feeling about Mando season 3 so far?
I'm one of the people who's kind of been somewhere in the middle. I've loved a lot of it, but I think that there's been a little bit of a writing issue until the last like 2 or 3 episodes. It's taken a little bit for it to find its footing. There's something to be said about the idea of taking the stuff that happened in the cartoons and making it the focal point of a show that is now live action. And we're moving on from a samurai spaghetti western into like a lore heavy important part of the galaxy, and that's like such a massive shift for the series. And I think that it's taken a little while for it to figure out how to do it properly without totally alienating people. And I thought that the last 2 episodes or so really figured out the groove of getting it right. I think that some of the episodes seem a little misplaced from others. Like the 3rd episode is one of the best episodes ever, but it's so like jarringly just in the middle of stuff happening. And you're like, okay, that seems like a choice that is being made, but like it's still Star Wars and it's still good. And it's still the stuff that we like about it. It's just been kind of an adjustment to having Din and Grogu take a little bit more of a back seat, which is not necessarily a bad thing because the title The Mandalorian can go all encompassing to the Mandalores, you know, like in all of the Mandalorians. So it's an all-encompassing title. It's just that you have to be able to shift the perspective, and that was a weird thing to do. Even though, like, post season 2, when Luke showed up at the very end of the finale, we probably should have known that was kind of like the shift and where it was headed. And like now in hindsight, with the Dave Filoni announced film, we know like, oh, hey, this is much bigger than we initially thought as like the Lone Wolf and Cub TV show set in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I don't think any of it's been bad. I just think that it took a little bit, because even I was like, it's a Grogu and Din show, but it's not. How do we rectify that in your mind? But it's still Star Wars, and I was happy
Yeah.
to enjoy it. Like, I'm still getting weekly Star Wars. You know how happy that makes me?
Yeah. Well, it's
For
good to
one
hear,
more
just because like the online space, there are people who have the exact same feelings as you do, but instead of looking at the positive side, they go all in on the hate side of it all.
Oh, 100%.
So it's, and I'm not saying that I was expecting that from you, obviously, but
Oh.
it is good to hear that, like, even though sometimes you don't like it, you're open to the next week and the next week and the next week. Whereas some people, they see something and they're not open to the next week because they're holding on and holding grudges for what's happening.
100%. And I don't want to be that. Like, the internet has found its voice. Like Kevin Smith said it in 2001 with Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Like, the internet is like a great tool, but people have learned to use the internet to do one thing, and that's like bitch about movies. And it's like so true about Star Wars. They've just learned to just bitch about Star Wars.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, that's great. But you know what else is cool? Like, even when it's not always like peak Star Wars, it can be like really good. And you don't have to like all of it. Like, Star Wars is like going to a buffet. There's something for everyone. You're not going to like everything you run into, but guess what? You're going to find something you like. And that's a cool
Unless
thing.
It's a vegan buffet, then
I mean, you'll still find something at a vegan buffet, Brian. I can promise you that.
I don't know.
All right, well, let's not hold the conversation any longer. Let's dive into this. We got episode 7, The Spies.
Yes.
And we'll just kind of start the conversation off at the beginning of the episode, see where it spirals from there. The very beginning of the episode, we get to, well, it's the Elia Kane part of this episode. We first meet up with her. She is secretly meeting with Moff Gideon, giving him some information regarding what has happened, the Mandalorians, etc. Moff Gideon obviously is in the dark there. We see that he's alive, he's well, he's not captive or anything, he's doing his thing. So we had idea that she was clearly working for him, but it was never confirmed. Now we get a confirmation, yes, she's working for him. She is one of the spies. So Brian,
spies plural.
Oh, we'll get to that.
I know.
Don't worry.
I'm just saying. I want people to remember that it's not called The Spy.
Yeah.
Spies.
Before we get to the stuff on Navarro, Brian, start us off, and we'll kind of just jump in as we go. What did you think about the cold open with Elia Kane, Moff Gideon, kind of setting up everything that followed?
Whoever did the CG for Coruscant Underworld area,
feels like Blade Runner, and it's incredible.
I was blown
I loved
away how it looked. I was like, holy crap, like that looks real. Like I was very much Jake like Blade Runner. Like it was like, whoa. I love Imperial.
It reminded me of that dope city we saw in Obi-Wan. I forget the name.
Yeah,
of the city.
100%. The one in the second episode. Like, honestly, man, I think people forget, like, one of the coolest things about the prequels was seeing so many different planets and ones that were so heavily populated. And Coruscant has always been such an interesting point because it's kind of like the centerpiece of the galaxy. It's the capital. Like, there's so many people there. It's the center of the universe for all intents and purposes. And so to like revisit it in these ways, like, one of my favorite parts of Attack the Clones is all the like ground level parts when they're looking for the bounty hunter who tried to kill Padme, and you're just sitting there and you're like, man, I want to revisit that. Like, remember when they were talking about doing that Star Wars TV show years and years ago that Lucas was going to oversee, and they were saying it was going to be Underworld. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of stuff that I think it would have been, and like you can still do stuff like this, like just a little part of it having Katie O'Brien's character like kind of like slinking off in this underbelly, and you have these characters like with the vents as they're walking through and they have hoods on, and it just felt very cool, like a very noir style setting. It was fun.
Yeah, it totally played to my like love for that sci-fi genre.
Yeah,
like obviously Star Wars is like part sci-fi, but it's heavy fantasy, and this played towards again that Blade Runner sci-fi part of genres, and I love it. And it also kind of solidified how much I hate Elia Kane. I love the like. I love how she plays the character. But
Ugh.
my God, do I hate this character?
She's so good.
She's so good and slimy
Put
and
her in
snaky and like
everything.
she's just Katie O'Brien. Like I love that she's been given this opportunity to play this character. And coming from season 2, where she just played a communications officer aboard the ship, they spiraled that character into this character. And I just love the way they're using her. It's in such small pieces, except for the one episode. We've seen just bits of her, but as my laundry goes off, every time we use her or we see her, it is such an important piece of what's happening. We had the previous episode with oh my God, why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? Brian, help me please.
Who?
Pilot.
Give me more context.
The pilot.
From Avatar.
What's his name?
Why am I blanking?
I
He
really
follows
don't
me
know
on
who you're
Twitter. This
talking
is super
about.
embarrassing.
Oh my God, the X-Wing pilot, Brian. What's his name? They're yelling at us in the comments right now.
Definitely.
I'm drawing a blank of who you're talking about.
He's from that show that had
What?
Shang-Chi.
What is his name?
Someone
All I can
tell us.
Carson Teva.
Carson
Thank
Teva.
you.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
Carson Teva. Gordon. I feel like a moron right now.
I was thinking of a pilot, like some random dude that was flying. I was like,
the
what?
first name that popped in my head was Trapper Wolf, and I couldn't get it out of my head. Like I just could not get it out of my head. Anyway, we saw her with Carson Teva, very small sequence, and then we see her now. It's so impactful. Like every time she's there, it's so impactful, and I love how they utilized her in this episode of the reveal of like, oh, Bo-Katan, the Mandalorians, the covert, Din, and it's and we learn that Moff Gideon had no idea. Like he didn't know this was happening. This is all a surprise to him. It spirals into stuff, obviously, and I'm interested in where her character goes if we see her again, because we only do have one episode left. But yeah, I love the way they're using her. I love what Coruscant looked like. I thought it was all great. I thought it was a great opening to the episode for sure.
Can you imagine if we got like an underworld show that was like just looked like that all the time?
I would love it.
I think there's a potential for that, like especially if Acolyte is as great as we're all hoping, and people like love Acolyte, because Acolyte is supposed to be like more of a noir mystery set in Star Wars during the High Republic era. Like there's a potential for that, and I love that, because again, one of the coolest things that Mando has done is, like, to Jake's point, taking these like small side characters and like building out with them and exploring these different parts of the universe with these characters. Like the coolest thing about the Elia character is she's always, all season, she seems so fishy, but you're like, there's a part of you that's like, please don't be what I think you are. Like that's why episode 3 was so good. That whole relationship that she has with the clone scientist is so fascinating, and to have it like the kick in the face to be like, actually she's been working with Gideon this whole time, you're like, god damn it, dude. Like you're really hoping it's not that. You really are, and it's like, well, fucking of course it is.
Agreed. No,
I would like her. I would like her in all the things, and I'm really upset that Marvel kind of just wasted her character. So now I'm hoping DC grabs her and she just plays this badass character.
No, I'm hoping what's now called Max grabs her for a certain show. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so picking up from this scene, let's talk about the Shadow Council. Let's talk about the Shadow Council with Moff Gideon. We see him walking through what we can call his lair, which eventually we learn is on Mandalore. We have the troopers who are lined up on guard waiting for him. He walks into a room, and we see what we can consider the highest ranking officers in the remnant of the Empire. They are the warlords that we heard about earlier in the season about Katie Sackhoff, when she had that line of like, I have fought off multiple warlords, etc. We see a bunch of them via hologram talking it out, the plans, the future, etc. We get that incredible information regarding Thrawn.
That was Thrawn. They said the name.
I love it
so many times,
and it's like he's in play. Like he's obviously been around. There's certain officers that hold on, Brian, hold on. There are certain officers that know about him, certain officers who don't believe that he's actually exists back, etc. We also get Hux, which is a really, really cool
Dude.
tidbit for people who read the
Mhm.
Aftermath trilogy. My
I
only
think that was
gripe,
huge.
is that there was no Ray Sloan. Where
Yeah,
Nice.
I was a little
Ray
surprised
Sloan?
about that, and which makes me think that there's a
I
story
hope
we
there's a
haven't
plan
gotten
for
yet.
her. Oh my god,
Yeah,
I
you
hope
know what
there's
I
a plan
mean?
for her.
But like, I mean, dude, we got Hux, we got Alien, we got Thrawn name drops.
Mhm.
Like this sequence, honestly, might have been one of my favorite Star Wars anything sequences because I don't know how old everyone in the chat is or anything like that, but like I remember when we had no Star Wars. Like
Me
post
too.
the original trilogy, pre the prequel trilogy, we had no Star Wars except the books and the comics and a couple of games. But the books gave us the Thrawn trilogy, like the Heir to the Empire trilogy. And this sequence felt like something almost straight out of that, where like the remnants of the Empire have been like existing and hiding and trying to find their way to get back. And they have this grand plan to like come back with Thrawn as the leader and all of this. And it was so just like I've waited my entire life
Same.
for like this thing to happen basically and to like get on the path of, oh my god, they're really going to do like an Heir to the Empire adaptation.
My favorite Star Wars trilogy of all time.
Mine too. It, like if you've never read Heir to the Empire, I can't recommend enough. Like even though it's Legends, like please read Heir to the
It's so
Empire.
worth it. Oh my
It's
god,
so
Jake-
worth it. And
Jake told me not to.
I told
honestly-
you to wait.
it's
what I
totally
said.
now is the time. Especially because like if you've seen the Ahsoka trailer, it's no coincidence that they like legitimately just name drop it
Yeah.
mid trailer. Like
Yeah.
this is where we're headed. So to like reacquaint yourself or acquaint yourself with it for the first time if you never have. But like that was so cool. And I loved the hologram setup because that's one thing that like Star Wars has always been so cool of. Do you remember like the first time you watched Empire and Vader's having a conversation with the Emperor through the hologram, and you're like, this is the coolest shit ever. And here's in a room where all these guys are and ladies are on holograms talking to Gideon, and holy shit, like Gideon controls the room in such a specific way. Like that scene was so good.
Yeah.
And like shout out to Rick for the way he like shot it because it is so good.
I love that he is involved with all of this stuff. Like every show, he gets at least one episode. He's producing. He's involved. I love that because he is such a talented director.
He
Like
really is, dude.
he is like Jon Favreau's a talented director. Dave Filoni's a talented creator. There's a lot of directors that come into here and they're great. But I like personally, Rick Famuyiwa is probably one of, if not the best that has been involved in this Mandoverse. Like his directing and his ability to tell stories while also telling or developing characters inside of it is absolutely fantastic. And he thrives in this type of situation with these types of stories the best. And allowing him to tell the hologram scene was incredible. You're right. The way that it was shot was so beautiful. And then obviously, like, you have the actors at your disposal that you have. They're going to bring together these characters in this scene beautifully. Fun fact, Hux was played by another Gleason in this episode, which is a great tidbit and Easter egg. Brian Gleason played Brennel Hux, which I think is fantastic.
Well, I'll say this, like, it's the one thing that they need to get on board with more is recasting roles when the actors are when the actor's too old to play the younger version. Always go with the younger actor if you can. It's harder to do now in like an in-between story, but like we haven't seen Hux younger. So using another Gleason that's younger to be that character was the most brilliant move.
Yeah, agreed.
And it worked.
Agreed. Brian, I know you want to talk about it. Let's talk about Thrawn. Let's talk about the big blue boy.
I mean, we know he's coming. I mean, we literally saw it. Part of me still doesn't believe that he's there. Like a small part of me. Like,
what do you mean, like where? Like where?
Like in live action?
No, just kind of like.
You think he's still like in Outer Rim somewhere? Or not Outer Rim.
Kinda.
Okay.
Kinda, yeah.
Like the unknown region somewhere.
I almost kind of feel like Yeah, Andy, that's what I thought too. You guys know that this isn't Hux that's his dad.
Oh yeah, that makes more sense. Which is why
Yeah.
it makes more
No,
sense
I
not
know.
to have him then.
Oh, okay,
Well,
yeah.
someone in the
okay,
chat
yeah.
earlier got me confused because he was like, it would have made more sense to have someone else
Yeah,
play,
no.
and I was like,
Which,
wait, no.
To
Although
be
Brendan
completely-
Gleeson would have been dope. I'm not gonna lie.
to be completely honest, I think that was a bigger deal to me than anything because he's in so much of like the books and he's a huge player in the books,
Yeah.
and comics. But yeah, no, part of me almost kind of feels like he's still not found. And then, but like maybe like I don't know, by the end of like next episode or something, like probably honestly it would make sense the next episode, like him actually being found. Like
I see what you're
he's
saying because there was
found
definitely
then.
dialogue that kind of because even Gideon says he goes like, "Where is Thrawn? You guys keep talking about Thrawn, but like,
Yeah,
where is he?" And I thought that was really interesting. Like, it felt very specifically dialogued.
it's just like I can just see them being like, "We found Thrawn" at the end of like next episode, and then in Ahsoka seeing like his coming back to like assuming the
Right.
position type.
I think
thing.
there's a chance that because it seemed like at least one of them was like super confident, like this is Thrawn, like Thrawn's the granddaddy, like
Right.
he's the dude.
Yeah.
I like, and obviously it's all off screen and we're just speculating, but I do think there's a chance that maybe that officer saw like a hologram of Thrawn, like him communicating, getting communication out,
Yeah.
or some kind of like audio feed, him trying to get information out again, or maybe a scouting party or something along that lines.
Some
Because
sort
it
of
almost,
beacon.
yeah, like it just feels like that officer wouldn't be as all in on Thrawn if he didn't like hear or see him
Right.
for at least a little bit. And that's just me again speculating, kind of just throwing it up against the wall. But I agree.
I mean,
like,
that's
I don't
fair.
think I don't think he's physically around yet. I definitely think that he's kind of like not around enough to make everyone
You think
else.
he's recuperating? Like
No, maybe like I mean I think he's not around enough to make all of the others ponder or at least think that he's not real, like that he's not around. And maybe that is often the unknown regions or where nobody has physically seen him, like maybe he is healing or doing something else. And
he could
but-
also just be like amassing an army, like what,
Yeah.
like kind of what we've been seeing, obviously with the Mandalorians, right? Like what Bo-Katan's having to do is going place to place, collecting Mandalorians, trying to get firepower, trying to get ships, trying to create a fleet. What if he's doing that? Like, there's
I
every
agree.
possibility that Thrawn could be just building a fleet.
What if he's on Exegol right now?
Right. That's honestly been my thought for a while, is that what if that fleet on Exegol was something that he started?
What if he's on Exegol right now? What if that's where Hux is?
Yeah. There's so much, man. There's
so
so much
much.
potential because,
Go
again,
ahead, PJ.
like, I was just going to say, like, we see the pieces in Rise and we see where we are now. Like, there's a lot of coming together in these moments that just are starting to, like,
just think of it
clash
like
in the best way.
Obviously Palpatine is the one who curated everything. Like he's the one who designed it all, made sure like people are in place to make the plan go through. But when you go back, like eventually when this is all said and done, and I'm just again throwing it against the wall, when you watch Rise of Skywalker in the future after all this is done, you're gonna be like, oh, that's all happening because Thrawn did that. That was Thrawn that made those plans. He decided on that and made those moves and that move and made the Empire, the First Order, etc., etc. Like that's gonna be cool to go back and watch it years later.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what Project Necromancer is.
Oh, it's
I think so,
100% what that is.
I think. Well, what's necromancy? Necromancy is rising from the dead, essentially. So
and
it's not just Palpatine, but it's the Empire altogether. Is what it's. Yeah, I think.
And we got to remember, like, they're pulling from one other trilogy right now from the EU, And it started with Rise, and that was the Dark Empire trilogy. And that's where we learned about, it wasn't necessarily called Project Necromancer in it, but like that's where the Palpatine clones started to come from. Like the only thing I hope we never get is Luke, because
You don't want to see Luke?
No, Luke is not my favorite. But I mean, that stuff is totally built out of that. And I love that. Like, again, that's why I kind of like the cherry picking of the EU, like bringing Thrawn back, trying to do certain things. Yeah. And now we're starting to see, like, for all the problems that some of the sequels kind of had in like building out, they weren't as well thought out. Mandalorian doing some of the heavy lifting in the same way that Clone Wars did for the prequel trilogy is actually really great.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's going to make them much more enjoyable by the end of it. Like
100%.
everything's going to kind of, just pieces are going to be out there. Just quick sidebar on the Luke thing. Have you seen the online chatter about Luke being turned into Ezra?
I kind of believe that. I think we're seeing
and
a
Ezra
lot of
being the one that comes back. So Brian, just because you haven't read it,
no, I understand that, but I'm saying, are they saying Ezra's going to be a clone, or
just
just
going to be two of them essentially?
Yeah, because there was a evil Luke and
I knew that, but
like what about the, like, you know how everyone keeps speculating that Inquisitor or that red lightsaber person that Ahsoka's fighting in the trailer? What if that's Ezra?
Oh God, I hope not. That'd be so.
I just love saying it. It's just funny to say it.
It is. It's the best.
All right. Real quick before we move on from the Thrawn stuff, and this is kind of leading into what I wanted to ask too. Gordon asked, "What are the chances that Thrawn shows up in next week's episode?" Let me put an over under. Let me see. I'm gonna put an over under 63% that Thrawn shows up.
I don't think you'll see him, but you'll hear his voice.
Okay.
Yeah,
because that voice, you know that voice.
Okay.
I'm of the impression that we might hear his voice and see his eyes, but not see him. So very similar.
Like just a close up of his eyes. That'd be so sick.
Because like Thrawn's eyes are very specific characteristics that you could do something super easily. And honestly, like for all the Doctor Who fans out there, during the 50th anniversary, like after Capaldi was announced as the next Doctor, but we hadn't seen him yet, during like the big finale of the episode when all the Doctors show up, they had like this moment where it was just on his eyes. And it was like a cool moment where we saw 12 before we had seen him. I could see something like that because they were so specific in trying not to show us Thrawn in the Ahsoka trailer. Now, maybe that was because they were waiting for the finale for us to see him for the first time, but they may be waiting for the like major reveal to be in Ahsoka, because Ahsoka is, for all intents and purposes, is a sequel to Rebels.
Agreed. Wait, so PJ, are you under 63%?
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm under, but like, do eyes count as seeing him?
Yeah, technically.
All right, then I'll give you like an over 63, but like 64%.
I'm gonna say over, and
all right.
I will
I
wake
would
up
love
every single person in my neighborhood.
I would love. I don't know if they would do it, but I would really love a Avengers style tease like they did for Thanos.
Yeah,
where not a post-credit scene, but like the last shot that we see.
If they
like
do it,
him
that's
turning around, or like the camera slowly like panning up, and we just see fucking Lars Mikkelsen as Thrawn, and it cuts to black. Because remember, season two ended with Luke and Grogu in the elevator. Elevator closes, cut to black.
Right.
They're not afraid to do it.
Oh no, they're
100% honest. I want to hear his voice more than anything again.
See, I think they might save his voice for the Ahsoka stuff, but seeing him is a big deal. Like seeing him physically in blue, the white jacket, the red eyes. I think that's much bigger of a deal right now than it is the voice, because we know the voice. Like we get it.
I'm so sad he's not going to be my unique character for much longer. Like he was my character.
We've had Thrawn for like 30 years, my dude.
I know, but like how often
about it?
How often in the last 15 years have people been like, "Oh, Thrawn"? Da, da, da. It's only until like recently has he become
us?
A more.
And I don't want to be like I don't want to say like a gatekeeper about it, but like the old school Star Wars fans, we all love Thrawn. Like,
oh yeah,
He's the
for sure.
character we've begged for them to bring back from like of all the characters in the EU. He was the one where it was like, please, for the love of God. So when they announced him coming back for Rebels, like I lost my shit because it was like, oh my God, it's finally happening. Even in a cartoon, it was like, oh my God, Thrawn is going to be canonized. Like that was such a big deal.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. All right. Moving on from the Thrawn stuff, because Brian could probably talk about for the next 2 hours. So we got to move on.
No, because to be completely honest, if I had for that whole scene, I would bring up Hux more than I would Thrawn.
Well, we could see him next week. There's a chance we could see more of him next week too, which is cool. So,
because I mean, to me, I'm like, dear God, please, like, get into like Phasma territory. Like, I would love to see that. Like,
I think we're headed down that road, Brian. I definitely think we are headed down that road. So, all right, let's get into the Navarro stuff before we jump into everything Mandalore. And really, the only big thing regarding Navarro, even though there was some really cool stuff, seeing the fleet that they have and seeing the two clans kind of come together and, you know, put their ways aside for the time being, was Grogu has a transformer. Super cool.
This is the best thing in the
Grogu has his very own Rock'em Socket robot, if you will. He is officially inside IG-12, as he controls IG-12. He has his own battle droid, if you will.
Yes.
And it's pretty fantastic. He knows how to speak. He knows when to speak. He can push buttons. As everyone in the chat, yes.
Yes.
Annoyed Din as a father where his child
perfectly
talk is my favorite thing ever, and like an entire mood in and of itself. But I'm gonna need Hot Toys to get on the Mech Grogu toy like right now, so I can
I need to be able to open that up and then send me a baby Grogu so I can put him on the inside. That's all I need.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I want that toy now.
That toy's gonna sell off of that pop figures is gonna sell like no other. Oh my God.
The amount of laughter from that whole in the second the IG-12 showed up till like them leaving for Mandalore, I was laughing my butt off. And even the second time, like the fact that they had him hitting yes, and then they cut to another scene where they're walking down the street and he's still going yes. And I died when the Anzellan went, bad baby, no teasing.
Dude, the best.
I was just like, oh God, that whole entire scene.
They just know how to use the characters. They just know how to use the characters, especially with the Anzellans. Like like we love them and we know what they are, but they're placing them in the perfect situations. And right now, the perfect situations are next to Grogu, and it's working.
Yeah.
And if we just see them for this, it works perfectly. It was really
that even goes back to the first episode of the season, right? When they go back for the very first time and they're sitting there talking to Grief, and he's like, I thought you finished your mission and you're hanging out with him. And Grogu's just using the Force to spin around in the chair and like grabs the candy. And he's like, what is happening? But then even eventually Grief is like, look, man, I think he's going to love this thing. Like, let's put him in it and see what happens. And Din's like, please don't. And he's like, no, let's do it. No, please don't give him legs and a voice. And too late.
At least he doesn't have to carry him around anymore. I mean, you know, he's got to pick him up if they're in distress, which we saw a little bit later in the episode. But it is nice now that he can just walk and hang out and do his own thing, you know?
But do we want Grogu to, I mean, yes, we do, but do you like, does the character want Grogu to actually be that mobile? And,
just imagine, like, maybe Grogu starts using the Force and he starts using like IG-12's arm, and it's like,
oh, dude,
like it starts following him.
Yeah,
like that would be sick. That'd be cool.
I'd like that.
Like, who's the genius that thought of that? Like, never in a million years would I have thought, like, oh, they're gonna hollow out IG-11 and let Grogu be a transformer inside it. Like, what? Like, if you would have told me that, I would have said, it's more like a drugs.
What are the Power Rangers things called? The Megazords?
The Megazords.
Yeah, it's like a Megazord kind of, because Transformers don't have things on the inside, you know.
No, but it is just genius, and it makes sense because at a point. I mean, how long were we talking? Especially when he first showed up at the end of season 1, like is he gonna walk around with him everywhere? Is he gonna like that was like the thing that people were most up in arms about.
Yeah.
And now he's freaking in an IG droid controlling it. Can you imagine? I would love to have heard the phone call to Taika Waititi going, "Hey, can we get you to just say yes and no on a recorder really quick?" And him being like, "Sure." And just like, and then it just became this. Like it's genius. And I need to see Molly's reaction to when that happened.
Oh, it's good.
the best.
It's good.
And
Is it?
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, when they're walking through the town square and the Tarsant has his little booth there, and Grogu keeps stealing the food, and Din is like, "You need to pay for that. Like, stop. You can't just take things." And he's like, "No, no," and he just like keeps grabbing stuff. I was like, Grogu is so adorable, and when like the more we give him like a chance to grow as a character in little moments like that, like even though it's comedic, it's also like character growth because now he's starting to vocalize. Now he's actually doing stuff. Like again, he's mobile, he's moving, he's doing things. That is
So
great. Like it's so good, and that is a character that I think there's a big future for this character for a lot of reasons.
For a long time.
Yeah, and for now though, like now he can actually do stuff in a way he couldn't before, and like as comedic as it is, it's also great character development.
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
Hilarious.
All right, let's get into everything Mandalorian because there is a lot to discuss here. So not much happened on Navarro outside of Bo's speech, which every time Bo steps in front of a crowd, it's incredible. Katie Sackhoff just continues to kill this character. But we learned that they are essentially taking the fleet to Mandalore. They're retaking the planet, and they need a small gathering party to scout the grounds, see what they can do, find information, just look over the planet, if you will, before they bring the whole fleet downstairs. So as we are getting there, they're starting to do their thing. We meet some pirate Mandalorians, and they've been roaming the planet ever since the Night of 1,000 Tears. They've been there the entire time, always on the move. Interesting, curious where that goes, if that's actually the case or if there's something else involved there. So before we get to everything with the Empire, when they kind of invade, they go downstairs, blow the planet. Brian, what did you think about the pirate Mandalorians and everything that was kind of introduced on the surface before we go below?
Who is the main actor that was doing most of the talking?
He's from Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick.
Okay, I know I knew where I couldn't remember where to place him. I love him. He's so good. He's really good at like maintaining like a seriousness where you're just like, oh,
Charles Parnell is his name.
Okay, well, he's great. The thing that made me laugh the most is the first thing they were like, "Do you have food?" Like they don't. It's not like, "Who are you?" Or like, "Are you gonna kill?" Do you have food? Like I was just like, "Oh, okay, I like them." Very interesting because to me, I don't quite see how you can survive on like that planet doesn't have vegetation at all. I mean, it might be underground.
Maybe they're killing.
And stuff, but
I mean,
I was going to say there's creatures and stuff.
Clearly, there's living creatures that they could hunt and stuff, and obviously the planet's gigantic. But yeah, I mean, it is a little interesting that. I mean, if we're putting like let's just put a random number on it. Let's say 15 years, right, since the Night of 1,000 Tears, since the Rebel stuff with Bo-Katan getting the Darksaber, everything before, the original trilogy. It is interesting. I love the concept of it. I think it's a really brilliant idea because, like, of course, there's probably is some survivors that don't want to leave the planet or didn't have a chance to get off world and do their thing like most of the other Mandalorians that left. I loved the aspect I loved most about it is they recognize Bo though. Like that's a big deal. Like those are people who know where she comes from, know who she is, her past, her
recognize her signet.
Like the Night Owl was like just everything about her family crest, all of it. That's a big deal because they're gonna follow her. Like if she's there, with another group of Mandalorians trying to retake Mandalore, and they recognize her, they're going to jump in for the cause, as long as they are not the spies, possibly, right? Like, we can always kind of bring it back to the title of the episode. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool concept, a really cool idea. It's intriguing. I don't know if it goes anywhere, but I love that Charles Parnell was one of them, and that he's, a Mandalorian, and we get some cool backstory with him, how he was always on the planet. He's kind of a big deal, etc. But yeah, just more Mandalorians for the fight. And that, for me, my obsession with it, it's never a bad thing. So
Look, I'm always about pirates. Like, anytime you put pirates in things, I'm probably gonna be happy. And like, this season's been oddly pirate heavy now, between like pirates like attacking them in the first episode, now this, and
I love
like
it.
Skeleton Crew has all the pirates. Like, look, man, I'm not mad about it. I had the same thought as Brian. Like, initially they showed up and I was super hype, and then like for half a second I went, wait a second, this place is like real screwed up. Like, how have they been surviving? But at the same time, I'm like, look, man, space wizards, laser swords, pew pew pew. Like, I'm not really gonna think about it too much. Like, I'm sure there will be some sort of explanation. And as we saw, like, there's this entire like underground factory and stuff. Who knows where they've actually been hiding out? Like, they could be the spies. We don't know. They could have been the Empire.
I was just going to bring that up in that, like, and I'm not saying that they are, but if you think back to it, and of course their ship was destroyed by a big giant monster, that makes sense. But they were headed in a direction.
Did anyone think that was the Mythosaur for a second?
I did.
I thought for a slight second it was.
Okay,
I think we're going to see the Mythosaur next episode, though.
I hope so.
Oh yeah,
I hope so. When you think about it, they were the one leading the charge as far as direction. Like, oh, we can take you here. I know where it is. And then when the creature attacks, they lead them underground. What happens almost immediately when they get underground? They get attacked by the Imperial troopers.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can make an argument that they led them there, and we're just not seeing it yet of them working for Moff Gideon. Like, there is a possibility, because we heard on the ship, right? We had that great moment between Bo and all of them sitting at the table about her basically revealing what happened with her and Moff Gideon. How she basically surrendered. She made a deal and it backfired. And then she had that moment with Din, which I thought was fantastic as well. So if she was offered a deal at one point, why would Moff Gideon not offer a similar or same deal to other Mandalorians involved or around?
100%.
There is a chance that Charles Parnell's character was offered something, or a group of them, and they just distanced themselves. Every once in a while, they met up for food, supplies, whatever, and they guarded the planet as Mandalorians for the Empire to survive, thinking that all of the other Mandalorians went and gone. And they were just like, hey, you guys can stay here. We'll give you this as long as you do this for us. So there's a possibility that they led them into a trap, and we just haven't seen it yet. It would suck, but it's very possible.
Well, I still don't think that that's the spy. I think I know who the spy is.
It's just a solid theory, though, right? In general, I mean, Brian's probably not wrong. I think that there's potential for another spy that feels very obvious, but like, honestly, like, one of the things that this entire episode was about was like, can these tribes get along? And when you bring a third sect in that no one knows, and like these two tribes, as for all intents and purposes, they still don't really get along, but they're trying. And like, that makes the entire finale of the episode so great with Paz Vizsla in the way that they handle all that. But at the same time, like, what's a good way to splinter some Mandalorians is that one of their own was actually the one who betrayed them. Like, that's a big deal.
Agreed. Brian, I think I know where you're headed, but let's talk about it. Title of the episode is called The Spies. So we have Eli Kane. That's one spy. It's obviously plural, right? Who do you think the other spy is?
The armorer.
You do think it's the armorer?
Because
TJ, you're in the same boat. I think you might be on a similar boat.
Yeah.
You are on the armorer train.
Yeah, I'm on the
She
armorer
volunteered to get off the planet.
Yeah.
There's also another character that volunteered to get off the planet. Axe Woves.
Oh, well.
That's not a bad guess either, to be honest.
I'm starting to think Axe Woves might be a spy. I'm really starting to think.
Well, he's been sus since the beginning. Let's be real. Like,
and he had that line last episode of like mercenaries for the highest bidder. What if Moff Gideon is the highest bidder? Right?
Well, here's the thing. Also, is he dropped? Crap, crap. What was I going to say? He, God damn it. It was such a good thing to say with it too. It was something he said. He did this episode. Crap. Go ahead, PJ. I'll cut you off.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, he's already got a chip on his shoulder, right, with Bo-Katan. Like, and one great way to get her out of the picture is to sell her out to the Empire. Like, that's not a bad call, to be honest. And he's continues to be kind of like a pain for them. And
so
that's curious.
Sorry, PJ. I would just
curious.
I will say, like, I'm still 100% like on the sus armorer train. Like, I've always had.
Oh yeah.
From the beginning, like, she's up to some dirty tricks. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's working for Moff Gideon or working for her own self to try to sabotage or do something. So I still 100% believe that she has some other plan that she's not revealing or that we haven't seen yet. All I'm saying is right before or right as the troopers got there, etc., he flew off. And not a single trooper followed him or shot at him. That's all I'm saying. Like, he had a clean slate up through there, and you're not telling me that one of them wouldn't take a shot at him?
I'm so annoyed that I forgot what I was going to say. It was really
It happens. It happens.
Like, to the point where, like, now I'm not going to say anything until I remember it.
Well, why you think we did get a super chat? Make sure I bring that up before we continue our conversation. This one's from Andy. Thank you so much, Andy. So the title confused me at first, but after rewatching the intro, I think the spies is just referring to the Imperials living on Mandalore.
Oh, I remember.
It's pretty much running the ISB.
It's not a bad call.
It's not a bad one, Andy. That's for sure.
But at the same time, like, Filoni and Favreau seem very specific in the way that they're building things out, and like their titles are always very specific and things feel very pointed. So I feel like it is still a tip of the hat because this is the penultimate episode. There has to be some sort of other shoe that drops in the next episode to me, and it could be like the reveal that someone sold them out, and that's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, and it's going back to the whole thing about, like, the reason the Mandalorians have always failed is because they can't come together. And whoever, like, let's just say hypothetically, whoever does sell them out, let's say it is Mandalorian, they're holding on to that old ideal of the way Mandalore used to be, of not coming together, specific clans, kind of surviving on your own, doing things for yourself, etc. I don't know. I mean, it could be a situation too where we've seen plenty of times through this series of them teasing something and us totally just clattering to it
because we're Star Wars fans,
and then it not being anything. Like, it could be that type of situation again. It's happened like 2 or 3 times over the first 2 seasons, and it happened once this season with Who Saved Grogu.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, look, that's just how we are as Star Wars fans, and even as, like, it just kind of comes with fandom, right? Even with comic books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Issue to issue, like, if there's a cliffhanger end and you're like, well, now I need to know, and you start going down the rabbit hole and you start to do the thing. And I mean, even look, Scream 6. I remember I saw Tim is in the chat, like, when the teaser trailer for it dropped and we saw the ghost face in the bodega scene, and we were both sitting there talking about it and just being like, what could it mean? And he's like, well, what if it's, actually like a vision? What if it's not real? Like, what if it's a nightmare? Like, what if it's that sort of thing? Like, we do this stuff all the time. It just is. That's what we do as fans.
That's the good thing about fandom. Brian, before you forget, go ahead.
I wrote it down this time so I wouldn't forget. He also dropped that line of
wait, who?
Axe. Whoa.
Oh, okay.
And I was here when it happened.
Yeah.
Which was kind of like, and that was after Bo said she did it, right?
It was on while they were on the ship before Bo dropped him from the ship. He was sitting next to
Did she
Paz.
already say that she gave it away or no?
Yeah.
I think she
no, this was before.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, this was as they were entering the planet. He said that as they were sitting in the chairs of the ship, and he because all of the new Mandalorians, like Paz and everybody, had never seen the planet. The first time they ever seen it, and they talked about it, and then he said, and I was here when it happened.
So he might be salty that it happened and he was left there.
Possibly.
I still think it's the armorer, though.
I mean, she's the most sus and always has.
The second she volunteered to get off the planet, I was like,
Yeah.
bitch. Like
Yeah.
you don't just
Something's going
like
on.
she's one of the leaders, like, and you're gonna leave. Like you're
Well,
one of the ones that is like spearheading this whole thing happening, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go back.
She's also the one spearheading, like, finding all the Mandalorians, and then what? And like that's the other thing, right? Here's
Yeah,
Gideon
put them
being
all
like,
in one spot.
yeah, exactly. Put them all in one spot and get rid of them, because that was exactly what Gideon was saying at one point is we need to deal with them. Like they're just need to be killed. So put them all in one place.
It'd be wild
It's
if she was
going-
never a Mandalorian and just literally.
It's going to be super interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens next episode now that everything is kind of broken loose a little bit. So look, we get a sick ass action sequence. All kinds of things are happening. Blaster fires everywhere. Troopers with jetpacks, Manos with jetpacks, club fists and weaponry and all kinds of cool stuff. Again, showing the power and might of what Mandalorians can do, but also showing if they're Mandalorians or Imperials, doesn't really matter, which I just think that they're Imperials in the Mandalore or Beskar suits. PJ, go ahead.
To Andy's point, he was like, if she was the spy, Gideon would have known that they were gathering before Kane's intel, though. But he can also be playing like other sides. It's good. If we know one thing about the Empire or villains in general, they love to keep other people in the dark about the things that are happening. Just because he says he doesn't know a thing doesn't mean he actually doesn't know a thing. But like that's always just a thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
A villain is never being entirely honest. Just saying.
I lie all the
Good
time.
point. We know you do.
I'm a villain.
I will just say, and I think I say it every single week it happens on this show. Mandalorian action makes me so happy.
Yeah, it does.
So happy. Like every aspect of it. Like they were outnumbered. I don't know about maybe not outnumbered, but at least let's just Star Wars reference. They didn't have the high ground, right? They were shooting upward. They were kind of pinned down until they were able to find a way out, and they worked their way. Paz takes his gigantic weaponry and just fires away, does what he needs to as pretty much a giant shield. All the action is incredible, and sadly, they were chasing down, trying to essentially take out the rest of them, and they got trapped. And it was all meant for a plan. Gideon was sacrificing his troopers for one reason and one reason only, to separate them and specifically get Din. He maybe wasn't going after Din, but he got Din. And Din was trapped and held captive at the end of the episode. We get that great scene where Moff Gideon shows up in his Beskar armor with his helmet, essentially taking on the ways of the Mandalore. Pretty badass. Like, I'm bummed that we're only seeing so little of him in the season, but they're really making his stuff count when we do see him, which I love. And if it's only for 2 episodes, every moment that he's been in the show has been impactful. And yeah, I'm really enjoying what they're doing with Gideon. I love how they brought him back. I love that us theorizing about the Beskar piece in that episode with Carson Teva was just his troopers saving him because they're wearing Beskar. There's our answer right there. So yeah, I'm loving everything with Gideon, but the action scene was great.
Oh yeah, I
The
didn't
ending
even
was
think
great.
about that, huh?
Yeah.
Literally is just
We
the
theorized
troopers.
that for like 20 minutes on an episode, and it just turned out to be his troopers. Like, whatever.
I mean, it
Makes
makes
sense.
sense though, right? Because
Yeah.
he's been trying to get back to the Darksaber. He clearly does care about Mandalorian technology in some capacity. Although I did say Gordon say at one point, he was like, if he got the Darksaber, wouldn't that mean it's not rightfully his? I mean, he doesn't care about Mandalorian culture. Though,
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit.
Like,
He just wants the Darksaber.
Yeah. But like, it
And
was
the
just a
meaning
nice
behind it.
tie
If
around.
he's the one holding it.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just a nice tie around, and it was like such a specifically easy answer. And again, because we're all Star Wars fans, we start to think about it, and it's like, oh, he and his troops just have Beskar armor. But
They
where did
looked
get
pretty
the
badass.
Beskar armor.
They looked pretty badass, by the way.
Yeah.
Who made them the Beskar armor?
Well, they have the.
Well, they had the Dark Trooper stuff.
That
so
is
I'm assuming.
PJ. That is a question that I have not asked myself.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the Beskar. They have it. They're
They
on
have it.
Mandalore. They took it all. But who is making it? That is a curious question. Because
Just saying.
there's no way an Imperial would know how to make it. Like it's a special craft to be able to melt down Beskar and make specific armor. That is very curious.
You need to just fire melt it down in a mold.
Not when the armorer is literally bringing around her hammers with her everywhere. She literally, like, we have these montage scenes of her making armor. Like, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Just a thing to think about.
I mean, I'm the one that already said she's a spy, so.
That is super interesting.
Yeah. I had that thought when they brought it up. I was like, that's very interesting. Someone had to have made that armor for them.
I love the fact that, also just kind of going off of it, but I love the fact that Gideon took over Mandalore on the Night of 1,000 Tears and basically never left. Like, he just made his base. He made his home on Mandalore, and no one has known about it since. It's this hidden section on the planet.
Yeah. It wasn't just chilling there because he had the TIE fighter.
And that's why all the comms are jammed. I think Andy said it earlier. Yeah. That's why everything is jammed on the planet. No one knew that they had been sitting there the entire time.
Yep.
Yeah, that was wild.
It's just very interesting to me. Like,
I love the world building and going on. I love it so much. So much.
Yeah, and Andy, they had Imperial sealed Beskar in the first episodes. We know, but that's the point, right? If there's a spy and someone's been helping them this whole time because someone clearly knew that someone was on Mandalore, and if Mandalorians are the ones who create all the Beskar armor, that means someone's helping him out there. It's just very interesting because it basically becomes a retcon all the way back to the beginning, and not even a retcon, but like
what if it's Gar Saxon?
Could you imagine?
The theory of him showing up at some point.
Well, isn't we know he's in Gar Saxon?
He voices him, yeah, but that can change easily.
So they would have to recast.
Yeah, which is I don't think that's a big deal.
I mean, we've recast plenty of people already. I mean, they recast almost the entire Rebels crew at this point. Like,
you don't have to tell me. I'm the one with his pop figure sitting there looking at me.
I'm just saying, Gar Saxon followed essentially the Imperial side of the Mandalorians when it came to Maul. They weren't technically Imperial, I know that, but Gar Saxon's dead. He is. Did he die? Who am I thinking of? Oh no, I'm not thinking of Gar Saxon. Sorry,
the lady.
No, Gar Saxon is dead. You're right. Sorry.
You're thinking.
I'm thinking of Fen Rao. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh.
I'm not thinking of Gar Saxon. I'm thinking of Fen Rao. Sorry. My bad. I'm not a Star Wars encyclopedia, guys. Sorry.
No.
Fen Rao is who I'm thinking of. Yeah. I mean, Fen Rao was super dope.
Alex and Molly would have corrected us like right away.
Yeah, they would have corrected. Yeah. But I would have left them to theorize. That's what I probably would have done.
Fen Rao.
Yeah, I think Fen Rao would be interesting to see if he would be involved somehow.
Yeah,
that'd be intriguing. Like maybe he's held captive, and he's basically forced to do this or something.
And there's so much interesting direction still, and like already knowing season 4 is written and like ready to move forward is so exciting, and knowing that there's a movie like on the other side of that is so exciting. I know we only have one episode left in the season, but I'm already thinking like 3 steps ahead because I'm already like, where is this all headed?
Yeah, I agree. Like, how are they going to wrap it up in one episode? Like, it feels like there's a lot.
We're getting blue ball cliffhangered for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. 100%. Yeah,
for sure.
I'll say this, and I think I said it last night after I finished watching it. This was one of my favorite episodes of anything Star Wars. This was one of my favorite Star Wars anything ever.
I agree.
For as weird as the season's kind of been for me at times, like I'm reminded when Star Wars is this great, like the magical feeling that I feel that I've waited to feel every time I turn on something Star Wars. Like the only thing missing when I start The Mandalorian is like an opening crawl, you know, like it just a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But like every time I turn it on and it's this good and it's like this peak Star Wars and you get this nerdy and deep into the lore and you're seeing all this stuff and the way that it's playing out and the way it's tying into the sequels and the way it's tying back to the cartoons and the way that it's like loving the original trilogy and the prequels. Like it's just so excellent and that's so fun and it's so nice. And I just love how much Filoni and Favreau love Star Wars.
Yep.
And that's like Star Wars can be any flavor. And again, it was what we were talking about earlier. You're not going to necessarily like everything that you get, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to. But even like every flavor of thing has something to offer. And when it's this cool, how can you? It's like baseball, man. How can you not get romantic about baseball? How can you not be romantic about Star Wars? How can you not? And this is one of those times.
Preach, PJ, preach. Just preach.
Just
all right. Before we start to wrap up, we do have one last thing to talk about. And I know one person on this panel is going to get extremely excited that I'm going to bring it up. But we have the heroic death of one Paz Vizsla, which I was not expecting to see.
Dude,
But
that
by
was
the
one of the most gruesome deaths I think I've ever seen in Star Wars.
But by the hand of Praetorian guards. We got Praetorian guards back in Star Wars. They aren't just a sequel trilogy thing. They were way, way, way back in the original trilogy era. We know that the Empire is basically holding them hostage. And Gideon said, hey, I need some guards, dude. Like, you got to give me some Praetorian guards. Like, when he dropped that line, I was like, whoa,
dude,
that's cool.
And they were like, hey, you act like you're about to be assassinated.
Yeah.
And especially now, because again, they may not know where he's been chilling and hanging out, right?
Well, and so they say that line of like, oh, you're acting like you're about to be assassinated. And then he goes, by Mandalorians. And all of them go, wait, Mandalorians? I thought we destroyed them. Like, they're clearly all scared of what Mandalorians are capable of, which is really cool to think about because we haven't seen that in Star Wars, obviously. Gabby, you didn't watch the episode. Relax.
I'm so with you, Gabs.
It's really great that she's trying, and
she's trying. She's adding to the conversation. I love the humor. I love the humor. Thank you.
It was shocking, Gabs. I'm so with you.
But no, Brian, take it away, man. Because out of the sequel trilogy fans here on Apocalypse, when it comes to us, you were the one who was all about the Praetorian guards. Take it away.
They're the coolest things. Like, I have always, since I was little, had an obsession with the Imperial Guards, the red ones. So, like, they're kind of like the cracked out versions of those ones. And they're just... I don't even know how to describe why I like them so much. They're just so cool. They're just like the most elite assassin type people, and it's just like I don't know. It was gruesome. Like, that death was painful.
Absolutely, and that was what I loved because again,
okay, you sick bastard.
Yeah, well, I'll say it. Did anyone else read Crimson Empire back in the day, the comic?
If I did, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a trilogy of comics about the Emperor's Royal Guard. And here's the other thing. I love that these specific Praetorian Guards seem like kind of a hybrid of the original Royal Guard and what the Praetorian Guards become.
Yeah.
They're not quite the sequel ones.
Right, and they're a step up from the Royal Guard, but not quite what we saw in The Last Jedi. But that comic was violent as hell, and you realize the intense training and like just how scary the Royal Guards always were. We just never saw it. Like, you know, we all wonder what it would be like, and Lucas was like, it just looks cool. Like, I don't really think about that. But the comics made them so like vicious and violent and interesting. And when it happened and they walked out, I was like, oh my God, it's like, it's happening. Like, you're seeing that like very primitive, violent side of the Empire that kind of they don't lean on in that specific way. And them like going after Paz the way they did, dude, are you kidding me?
It was so epic.
It's
like that slow-mo walk that they like when the camera pans around.
They like came out of the shadows.
Well, Paz, so he destroys all the troopers, right? He does his job. It's empty. And you kind of get this feeling like, oh, dude, that's awesome. Because in this moment, you're forgetting about the Praetorian Guards. Like, you don't know about it.
Yeah.
Like, you think completely. Like, oh, like he did it, like game over. That's awesome.
I literally thought
the camera pans,
make it out of this.
and you just see 3 red shadows walk out, and you're like, oh, this dude's about to die. Like,
yeah.
good knowing you, Paz. I'm glad you ended on a good note. I thought you were a bad guy. Thank you so much. But you're about to die a gruesome death. It was like he fought and he fought and he fought. His little blade, there was no way that was going to outmatch them. His gun overheated. But you needed to do that. Like, if they would have killed like a random Mandalorian or a couple random Mandalorians, it wouldn't have mattered. The fact that they took down Paz Vizsla the way that they did is a big deal. Like, that is a big deal because he's clearly a threat.
Guy.
He is a major threat. So, yeah, I mean, it was a statement. It was 100% a statement to make, and I'm interested to see if they return next episode. I imagine they would. And if they do, my God, is that going to be an epic battle? Whoever they fight, it's going to be awesome to see them fight like Dan or Bo or someone. It's going to be crazy.
Where was the comment? They didn't. Okay, so Andy, you said exactly what I was thinking. So
I think it was around the Beskar. Yeah.
Well, because when they did the final death blow, they went like through
like right up here.
Like yeah. So it was kind of like literally in between.
It's like stabbing a knight, right?
Yeah,
in like medieval times, you're not going to go through the metal. You're going to go around all of the armor. That's what
you always go underneath or over.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up.
They knew where the weaknesses were.
Yeah, for sure. It was great.
Did you guys ever think when we saw Paz come back in that very first season, like it was such a cool thing, number one, because we never thought we'd see him live action.
Mm-hmm.
But did you ever think we'd see him go out like so truly also heroic?
No.
Like, what a cool moment for him. And I know it's almost like pandering to Favreau himself for obvious reason, but like at the same time, man, it just goes to show, like, as much as we all love Din and stuff, some of the other Mandalorians are as tough, if not tougher, and like the amount of Imperial people he went through before being taken out by the guards was wild.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just wild.
I'm just thinking about poor Ragnar getting the news when he gets back. You already know Ragnar is going to be at some point like,
if we get to that point, I mean, he's only a kid right now, so we would have to go a long time in the future to meet him later on. But
he's gonna have some Game of Thrones shit coming. Like you know it.
We'll see.
It's almost like we have a movie set 15 years after the end of Rise of Skywalker, which is like enough time for a character to grow and decide that he's got a chip on his shoulder. Just saying.
We'll see. Well, look, that wraps up the conversation regarding episode 7. Before we head out, though, PJ, we got one episode left, man. And you're only on it for this episode. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts. I want to pick your brain a little bit. And we typically ask our guests one question regarding what is the one thing that you need for the season to end well, that you need to see by the end of the season for you to be fully satisfied with season 3 of The Mandalorian.
I think I need to see what becomes like an all-out war between Gideon and the Mandalorians. And I mean, it's very clearly like headed that direction, but like he has just tried to cap all of them. He tried to trap them all. He tried to take them all out.
Yeah.
And they're going to take that shit personal. He killed Paz. He's got Din. And I also want to see Grogu like go ham in that mix. That's what I want. In the finale, I want to see Grogu go absolutely ham on some soldiers.
Yeah.
Like take out some of the Imperial Guard. Let him have it, man. Like just get some of those stormtroopers, knock them out. Use that little body of yours inside the big mech suit body and just fucking kill some people. Like I want to see bloodbath Grogu. I want to see that.
I love it.
The little mind of his just snap because they have his dad.
I love it. Well, Paige, it's been an absolute treat to have you on the channel, man. Talking Star Wars with you. This has been fun. This has been a fun episode to talk about for sure. What a perfect episode. I know that the finale, you were originally slated to do the finale, but then we shifted things and like it turned out pretty good. Like it turned out pretty good.
Perfect. It was perfect.
So what an episode to talk about. Glad to have you on. Before we wrap up and head out, why don't you let everybody online know where they can find you, listen to you, all that good stuff.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram over at PJ_Campbell, and you can find me over at PLD Projects. I hang out over there with Paul Denuzzo, who was my co-writer the last 2 seasons of the Schmodown. He and we break down movies on Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film. They do a bunch of other stuff, including a show called Holy Snokes. If you need more Star Wars content, he and Maddie Gunner do that over there. We all need more Star Wars content, so go listen to that. But right now, we've been doing a series based on Shane Black movies. We just did an episode about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and we actually talked about Star Wars Celebration for a little bit. So go over, head out. Like, it's an hour and a half. It's a lot of fun. We had a good time. We're going to get ready. We're going to be doing the Indiana Jones series here in a hot minute, because it's like there's a new Indiana Jones movie around the corner. So head over to PLD Projects, hit the subscribe button. That's also on Spotify, pretty much everywhere you can find podcasts, and you guys can hang out. It's a bi-weekly show. Come hang out for a little bit. It'd be good to see you guys. I know I don't do a lot anymore, but it's a lot of fun. And to you guys, it was just fun to hang out again. So thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely, Pete. You are welcome anytime you want to talk about something. You have an open invitation to hear or preview.
It's not next week, apparently.
Just well,
okay. No, look, I understood the moment he was like, "Hey, about that," and I was like, "Say no more. Like, we're good. If I get the penultimate, we're happy."
All of PJ's links are in the description, guys. The YouTube link for the show, Twitters, all that stuff. Go check it out. And what PJ is referring to for next week, the show will be not on Wednesday. It's actually going to be on Thursday next week. That is because we are joined by Alex and Molly Damon of Star Wars Explained. They're coming to hang out. They are coming to hang out and talking everything Mando season 3, not just the finale, but the season overall, where it could go next. The whole shebang. We will be live next Thursday.
They had nothing better to do.
No, they weren't busy or anything talking Star Wars. So they'll be joining us here on Fando Thursday next week. So go ahead and make sure that you are ready, subscribed, all of that good stuff to join us next week. And then, of course, join us everywhere on Apocalypse. We're all over the place. Links are everywhere. You guys know when we go live, all that good stuff. So, PJ, appreciate it, my man. Thank you so much again for joining us. For Brian, for myself, this has been the Fandalorian Club for this week. Thank you to everyone in the chat. We appreciate you all. And if you're watching back on the replay, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, guys.